Good morning, grinders. Welcome to an MMA Abu Dhabi. We're in finally a morning card scroll. I am your host, Mike Brown, aka H3 Buddha, here with Scroll Patrol, and we got a crunch time before lock. Got a couple hours. The lobby's filling up, man. The MMA world, we're craving some morning fights.
Yeah, unfortunately, not in the contest that I'm not in the contest that I thought I would be in for this DFS card, but it's okay. Yeah, and not in my regular environment, but ready to talk some UFC.
Totally understand, and hey, there's still some contests out there, so make sure you guys are checking out the lobby, and we're gonna try to give you some winners, get you some picks that are gonna set you apart from the competition. But this particular slate, really, really important fight for the bantamweight division with Umar Nurmagomedov and Corey Sandhagen. 5 rounds. That's your starting point, like any other time on a slate. It very clearly is the two best fighters on the slate. But, you know, I always talk about when you see these guys moving up the food chain, sometimes that fantasy just falls off a cliff. I think you're looking at weight classes. The lower the weight classes, there should be more and more action. Umar's fights have most certainly produced from that standpoint. If there were to be only one guy that would dominate this fight, I would think it would be Umar. And that has me concerned for people that are liking Sandhagen. But I understand if you're getting 5 rounds of all action, how many times have we seen before where the loser, Sandhagen's what, 7K, actually put up a decent score?
Yeah, I think it's one like you could consider both sides of this fight. Like it's probably not going to hit in GPPs, but this could be a high scoring one. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling. I mean, I think the Umar side is the side that I'm on, but I think if Sandhagen wins the fight, he's going to land. He's clearly going to land on the winning lineup. So it should be a high scoring one, and yeah, it's perfect for DFS purposes.
It's so easy to get to Umar too. I almost wish that he was dynamically priced up to like 95 to 90, 9,900, because it's like that's going to be a first click. The ownership clearly going towards him. I'm going to have to look. The last time I did, it was 50%. You think that's pretty accurate to the field? The smaller field, the higher dollar stuff, it's just going to be right there.
Yeah, I think it might even be more than 50%. He's over. Umar is like over under 4.5 takedowns. So I think he's good.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard, right? Because it's like it's a clear, good, real good play, right? But around him, he's competing with people that absolutely, I feel like, can compete. Like Gaziev is a guy who will come out hot in the first round. If he gets a knockdown or 2 in the first, that's definitely possible. Magomedov is in there as well. Fernandez and Chiesa. Let's start with all these guys. I mean, actually, to be fair, I count Dumas in here as well. Do you? I kind of look at it as Dumas on up, right, for first round equity, for dominant equity, because then Guram's below him, so we don't even worry about it. But like, you've got a mixed bag of everything. You've got like the heavyweight striker I talked about in Gaziev, who potentially outside of the first round, I don't think he's going to score that well, but there's very clear first round equity against Mays. Let's talk about Fernandez and Yaya last. The Magomedov, so slow. Like, how did he get there? How did he score so well, like, last time out? Do you remember that fight? Trocoli stalled him out for, like, the first 7.5 minutes. Didn't do anything, and he still gets 94 points. So do you look at, like, Magomedov as a good fantasy long-term play, or do you think he's eventually going to bust because he's actually scoring? It's just volume-based.
Yeah, it's tough. It might end up under the field. I think because they got, like you said, like it wasn't necessarily a fight you expected to score that well. And that usually means there was a knockdown. And he did. He got the knockdown. I think he's fine. Like I'm not gonna like full fade him or anything. We've got a pretty high ownership number. I think like 38%. I might be under that mark. I think if he wins in the first round, he's a fighter that's going to get there and likely, that it would likely come with a knockdown. But if it goes into the second round, like I think his fantasy scoring starts to not be so appealing.
I know, and that's what the concern is. It's the same thing. Like I'm looking at a lot of these types of fights as the same way. Like Dumas has the knockout upside. Magomedov has the knockout upside. Gaziev has the knockout upside. It's just like somehow Dumas has the more outs, right? Like of all the guys in this range, it looks like Sandhagen actually could go for takedowns.
Yeah, exactly. And he's the cheapest too. So that, that gives you something to play with, gives you a little bit more wiggle room. He can do less and land on the winning line. If we don't have underdogs that put up big scores. So yeah, I mean, I think, Dumas, I think he might be a little bit underrated in terms of fantasy. Like he's not the best fighter, but he can get a knockout and he can add some grappling. So yeah, I think he's a fighter that we can target.
Yeah, let's talk about the other side of it. At least you know what you'd be signing up for if you're playing Tululian. The guy can come out and crack. Like he could hurt Sandhagen. And Sandhagen, for getting eye poked and then knocked out, he was knocked out just back in March or April, basically. I don't know. Like I'm looking to garner a little bit of leverage against these guys, like this Gaziev, Magomedov, or Sandhagen. How would you rank that? Like I think Mays is the odd man out.
Yeah, I agree. I don't love Mays. I don't love Doolin, to be honest. I just prefer the Dumas side. Sorry, so who's our ranking?
Well, I'm saying like Mays, Olakjacek, Tululian. I mean, I think Tululian clearly has the upside if he gets a first round finish. Olakjacek would have to win 2 rounds. That's like my thing, right? Like, and I don't even know if that necessarily scores all that well. If he tries to grapple, maybe. Mikey O isn't the type of guy though to go out there with the best game plan. And Mays, I don't know why. I don't know what I think a decision looks terrible for Mays.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, heavyweights. It's hard. I have a hard time envisioning Olakjacek and Tululian winning their fights. Mm-hmm. So that gets me off of them as underdogs. If they do win, it's probably putting up a decent score, just price considered. They're just not my favorite fighters, and it is possible if we have multiple underdogs win that a low score doesn't get there.
So I'm kind of looking at this range for like that leverage. Where are you going for leverage? Is it potentially going towards your favorite type, which are the lowest priced fighters on the slate? Maybe 2 fighters below Sandhagen. I mean, Tony Ferguson's getting a lot of love from people. He's always going to get love. The lowest priced fighter, 6,700. I mean, he could fall his way into a winning lineup just by simply getting a split decision. Okay, he's going against Chiesa, who isn't necessarily the highest paced fighter, and that's a little bit of my concern, right? Like if we're buying into this fight and it's not the best pace, I don't want to have a piece. But then it makes me more interested in Ferguson. And let me make the case for Yahya. Yahya is the guy who I don't rate at all, but Fernandez is getting so much love here in this spot, and he seems to be just kind of like a knockout or bust. He's not going to get you takedowns at will. He's not going to get all these different categories to score. So I think he's got a very narrow scoring path on this slate. Do you agree? Because it's like he's got the strongest inside the distance line. Ownership's going to go behind him, and you've got the Abu Dhabi type product in Yahya. A split decision is fine with me on this slate.
Yeah, you can make an argument for either of these fighters. I definitely want to be over the field, like especially like Ferguson will probably be like multiple times over the field. Like he should be higher owned than 4%. So he's got, I think 17% chance to win the fight, and if he wins the fight, he's probably on the winning line. So with Yahya, I agree. I think I can see a path for either of them. For Yahya, he's got the home octagon advantage, and again, at this price tag, he's probably landing on the winning lineup.
Are we literally saying a 7-fight losing streak potentially has win equity?
Yeah, but I mean, if they're setting him up for for a win, it would be a remarkable underdog win, and a great way for him to go out. So yeah.
Yeah, it is wild. I mean, Chiesa, I imagine, is one of those plays that you're just going to have to fade and hope that he just like sits in guard and doesn't try to like kill him, right? I think there's a lot of respect too. Like when you look at weigh-ins, when you look at these two guys, I don't necessarily think they're going to go to war. So that's really it. And Fernandez wise, do you think the same thing? Narrow window. I feel like after this first round, it at 9,300. Especially with those targets we talked about, right? Like I set it up perfect. Magomedov, Gaziev, Nurmagomedov, Snedekas, they're all potentially the same type of play as Fernandez.
Yeah, I do like Fernandez. I think he has, the potential to get some strikes and some takedowns. So I like him probably a little bit. Like I like Fernandez a little bit more than Chiesa. But I agree. Like either of them could get priced off the winning lineup.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like you have all these like striking guys up top. There's no takedown artist up top. Heck, there's probably not even a lot of takedown artists on this slate. But we can gravitate towards the middle range where the win equity starts going up, right? And I think the glaring value slash inside the distance line minus 105, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Joel Alvarez, right? And I'm going to be talking to myself here for a few as he cut out. But it looks like Joel Alvarez is a guy who will have way more experience. Hey, TJ. Nowhere I could have handled it, but Joel Alvarez obviously on the optimizer going to show a lot of ownership. It's all prop based, right? This is a guy who, if somebody shoots a takedown, he'll try to just get him in a choke. So he doesn't do anything until the pace is there. He's got a guy in Alvarez Brener who is going to push a pace. This guy has done nothing. You've probably played Brener a couple times in your lineups through a bit.
He's in my single entry today, and I made a rule. So I'm playing single entry. I did 150 in the $3 mini max, and then I put 20 in the $15. And because I am a UFC nut now, I'm just absolutely addicted to the UFC DFS. It's probably outside of NFL, it's probably my favorite sweat. I love just being halfway through and everything's going really well. You got 7 lineups that could end up optimal. And then it all goes to shit. It is pretty fun.
It's permutations, right? It's making sure you're targeting the right fights, making sure your ownerships are up to par. And this is one of those ones where if you're fading this fight, it's really concerning because this is a step up for Brener against Alvarez. And again, the guy at least has the ability where he can, Alvarez will not, if he knocks out Brener quick, I'd be concerned for the slate because I think Alvarez is going to put up 105, 110 points. And Brenner's more apt to go for takedowns, right? So I do like him. Clearly, we both targeted him, being John and I, in the lineup HQ. Is it hard to avoid? What were you looking at for this one? Because of us tagging plus Alvarez being such a great play.
Yeah, I did more research for this slate than usual just because it was the morning one and I was sitting with nothing to do last night. And so I actually do have this fight in 100% of lineups. Yep. I have 50% Alvarez, 50% Brener. So I'll be slightly over, probably pretty close to even on Alvarez. But then way, way over on Brener in this spot. Just because exactly what you said. It's good leverage, and then it's either going to be a ton of takedowns or the other guy's probably going to knock him out. And so likely going to be higher scoring either way. I went main event in every lineup this week just because I have 80% Nurmagomedov and then 20+% Sandhagen. I did a couple lineups with them in both. I guess you can see my exposures on the screen, my attempted exposures. I went with this fight in every single lineup as well as the main event in every single lineup.
Yeah, definitely, clearly the strong target here. Let's move on to the women's one, right? This might be the fight that's hidden here. Nobody wants a piece of this. But if one of these fighters gets a 30-27 type of win, or if somebody gets heck, Mackenzie Dern's been getting hurt in her fights, right? What if Gardenius catches her? Not saying that's going to happen. I think more Dern finds a limb. Loopy sometimes fights a little bit dumb in there and puts herself vulnerable. So what does that mean? If a limb is there to be taken, Mackenzie Dern will take it. And you're talking about a fight that's basically a pick'em. I don't look at this slate as price, right? I think you can easily make lineups. When you were making lineups, TJ, was it mid-range? I imagine this fight isn't that important, but if there's a ceiling, it would be important, right? So I think you may want to look here to get off of some of the higher owned guys. It's 20% each fighter or less, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have a tough time getting to the mid range a ton outside of the Brener and Alvarez in this spot, but I did find, especially in my single entry, I just landed with 8,500 remaining, and I was like, well, all right, who do I use? And
Well,
Mackenzie,
everyone's clicking Alvarez, which is sucking all the ownership.
yeah, exactly. And I have Brenner on it. And so I'm like, oh, where do I go here? And so I ended up going with Mackenzie Dern. And just because, I don't have a ton of reasons here, but I do like going to her in the mid range. I have more Dern than Godinez. I do have some Godinez too, but I have more Dern. Not my
It's grappling, right? Our
yeah.
scoring purposes. You're starting to learn it. Whether you believe you don't know it or not, she has grappling upside. The problem is her offensive takedowns have never been there, right? She's not going through takedowns at will to get a ton of scoring. So we're trying to get Squirrel back. It may not happen. Looks like maybe a Charger problem. But hey, we're here to break that slate down. So that middle range to me is the hidden gem, right? Like I like looking at these fights. They're going to have a good pace. People are going to get sucked in to a guy named Marlon Chito Vera. Okay. Marlon Chito Vera fits one of my favorite modes in DFS, and it's targeting an underdog with a better inside the distance line than their opponent. Okay. And he's going to always be like that because he starts so damn slow. He loses the first round. After the first round loss, usually, he starts picking it up. The volume starts a little bit more, but he's always going to be having to look for a knockdown, some type of knockout to win his fights. So I think his win equity isn't all that bad. I feel obligated to the viewers and everybody to tag him on Lineup HQ because he's always going to have second and third round equity. And the problem is the deeper the fight goes, I think it starts, the pace isn't going to be great. He might get like 70 to 75. So you're going to need other things to go right on this slate for Vera to be the play. But I still think he's got finish equity, and I don't think you can say that about a lot of underdogs. Now, Figueiredo's side of things, what happens if he starts grappling? What happens if he starts putting volume out there and starts hot, wins that first round, has a dominant second, and then starts slowing down? Maybe he's not optimal. It's hard to get behind him at 14%, but if he was going to grapple and have like a 30-27, I would love a piece of Figueiredo, wouldn't you? 15% ownership, lower. You talked about this range where you fell with 8,500. He's not that eye appealing. You went to Dern, but this fight must be one of the ones where it's like, hey, the weight class dictates everything. Lower weight class is more action. So Vera, is that a guy that you ended up with any? Because again, he has finished equity. I just don't look like he's the best target in the world pace-wise.
Yeah, I don't have a ton. I landed on about 15% of both of them in my 20 entry max. For my 150 max, I'll probably have a little bit, or I guess around the same, but I didn't X anybody out for my 150 max. I just I kept everybody in the pool, adjusted some exposures. And then for my 20 entry max, I cut it down. And so both Figueiredo and Vera are in the pool still. I got about 15% of both of them for my 20 entry. Didn't cut them out, but they are at the bottom of my pool.
You're matched in the field, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. I look at that fight as one that's going to have name value to a former champion in Figueiredo. I think the ownership is going to be a little bit higher in that spot. So personally, I would go lower, or I'm taking Figueiredo and praying to the gods that he's got a good game plan to hopefully be the guy at lower ownership, because there's, the other women's fight, Dudova and Sam Hughes. It's ugly. It's really, really ugly. Let me tell you that. It could be grappling based. Sam Hughes has turned back a couple prospects already in her career, and Dudova is not necessarily the world's most elite prospect out there. She does a little bit of everything, but nothing too great. So Sam Hughes can stick to a game plan. If she's going to go in there and try to take her opponent down at 7,700, I actually, at this stage of her career, wouldn't be that surprised, because I think almost any form of a win would be good for Sam Hughes. 7,700, I think it would be 80-S points through strikes. She's able to chip in with control time, a lot of volume. I think it's a sneaky target, but I also know that it's like the glaring women's fight, right? That's expected to go to a decision, not a lot to love. There's more opportunities for these ladies to maybe have like a 29-28, right? Like if Dudova has a good first round, then Hughes wins the second. We talk about this all the time, TJ. So that's one of the problems here. I think I'd be more opt to play Sam Hughes, just hoping that she sticks to a takedown game plan. Dudova, you had 8,500 left. I imagine you didn't even consider her at 8,500.
I'm getting to more of her than I want, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't have as much as Durham, but I ended up with 20% Dudova, and I think it's just because of how often I landed in that range. I don't really like it. I might try and get a little bit less than that now, just kind of hearing your breakdown. But right now I have 15% Hughes, 20% Dudova. Might just try and swap those, get it to about 10% Dudova here, get her out of two of my 20 entry max teams.
You see a lot of Russian influence, a lot of Abu Dhabi. Well, there's one fighter from Abu Dhabi, basically the Emirates. You can see that they're trying to put these types of fighters in winnable positions. And Sam Hughes is a tough girl. Like, she's going to go in there and fight for your money. That's like what you like. And Dudova, last time out, man, against Frey, she ended up with 77 fantasy points. She had a little bit of a health problem that was a little disgusting. She was 9,200 on that slate and put 7,700. So it's definitely let people down in the past. So we move on to another one that very clearly is one of my favorite. If I'm ranking like a top three, it's a firm top three fight. It's Jai Herbert versus Ronaldo Bedoya.
That's why I know what I'm talking about now. Because as soon as you started bringing this up, I was like, oh, it's the Bedoya fight. This is my guy. It's my highest owned fighter today behind her. Nurmagomedov.
It's a lot easier when you just break it phonetically. Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I did at the end there. That's what I decided to do at the end.
Everybody tries to rush through it. So Jai Herbert, right? Like 10 to 15%, we'll say he'll be 8,600. He didn't even look that huge compared to Bedoya when they faced off. So that was like a big concern of mine. Through the week, I'm looking at Bedoya. Bedoya is a guy who freaking put up a ton of points and 2 losses in the UFC already, right? Like, he's averaging 52.9 points and he's got 2 losses in the UFC. He's got over 115 strikes basically thrown, actually significant ones per fight. Sneaky control time as well. There's a world where Bedoya gets bailed out because Jai Herbert isn't that good and he's been hurt in a lot of spots. His best moment is probably against Ilia Topuria, where he knocks him down like the champion. And he still got memed on after knocking down Topuria. The pace is here, right? And obviously the money means a lot, right? Getting that extra few dollars to get to Bedoya makes him even better of a play. Do you think that's the reason why the ownership's going up? Plus, he's got volume, right? Like, we have hidden scoring for Bedoya, and that's always a good thing.
When it's just so rare, especially at that price tag, to get a floor and a potential loss, like, it feels so good getting an absolute ton of this guy when you think like I could get 50 or 40, and even if he loses, if you're playing, like, you're probably not going to win if you get 50 or 40 from a fighter, but cashing sure feels good, especially if you're playing in a single entry style thing, large entry fees, things like that. And so it feels so rare that you get a really nice floor on a guy at this price tag. And so that's one of the reasons I'm getting to an absolute ton of them.
One of my problems is I know a lot of lineups are going to start right with Bedoya, Nurmagomedov. They're probably going to take Joel Alvarez. And I think to get off of that craftiness of, like, we like Brener, so that makes our decision a little bit easier. But when you're looking at Bedoya, I don't hate if you're trying to do 10 lineups if you take Jai Herbert, because when he kills off that Bedoya ownership, he's going to look like $1 million. Do you think that's true?
Like, and that basically is exactly what Legend in the chat is referring to right now. Like, everybody is saying this. Isn't that worrisome for you?
Yeah.
That's definitely a Mike question, because all I can go based on is what everybody is saying.
Yeah, no, it's here's the thing. We have Bedoya moving up, and like I said, when you looked at them on side by side, he is bigger. Jai Herbert is definitely bigger. And I wonder who is going to be more physical, because what happens if Jai Herbert says, all right, I'm going to turn into a wrestler here against a smaller guy. He even has more paths to scoring because of that. So I think that Jai Herbert's definitely in play. 36 years old has me a little bit worried. He's just past the 35. 27-year-old Bedoya, right? They didn't put Bedoya on the sphere card for the Mexican heritage. I think it's just such a great target, right? You need to at least have exposure. If it's not for leverage again with Herbert, then you might just want to consider taking that type of floor play we talked about with Bedoya. But there's kind of a late notice spot that I really don't have a lot of faith. Usually, what do we see? We see a late notice fighter, TJ. The late notice fighter ends up being a massive underdog, unless they're like a A++ prospect, right? And we have Guram Kutsalagi versus Jordan Vucenic. And Vucenic's steadily been like a 2-1 underdog. No one, I don't think, is going to want to click his name. But like, my problem is Guram a fraud? Because 8,800, this guy has already crapped in the apple pie. He scored 56 points one time. The 2 losses, 38, 46. This is a guy who, if he can get offensively going on the mat, maybe he goes for takedowns. I would have interest. But, like, I think it makes Vucevic a more interesting play. And this is a guy off the Cage Warriors scene who I believe just had a win last week. Can you imagine getting ready for a fight last week and then getting back in there? I mean, TJ, you've got to be a special type of person to do that. Problem is, where was he? When he picked up the phone, was he out of shape? If he's out of shape, I think the value on Guram starts going up. This is a guy that's
Can you get that out of shape in a week?
Oh, yeah. These guys, they'll start friggin' they're hitting this all the carbs in the world, right? They're looking
That's
at
the thing, though, is like, that might be best case scenario for if you're fighting twice in a week. You know what I mean? Like, pardon me.
It's not at the same time cutting weight.
Right after your one fight, load up on the carbs, eat as much as you can, and then get back into the gym for a couple days and rest and relax for a couple days. As long as you're not worried about making weight, that's probably ideal.
This is just a weird one because I actually feel like Vucenic is a decent play on the slate due to Guram not showing up sometimes and slowing down the second and the third round. The good thing about him is he's been extremely durable. It is a quote-unquote step up because Guram kind of looked like an A+ prospect getting into the UFC. At 8,800, it is extremely difficult to get to him. I imagine in your 150 set, you don't have a lot of this fight period, but I also think that there is a ceiling in this fight, and it's very much tagged by Squirrel, probably for that same reason I'm saying, right? It gets you extra salary relief. There's an upside of a second or a third round finish. Heck, there's a decision equity. How are the builds? My problem is it feels like a 2 or a 3, like a 2-4 or a 3-3 will win this week. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying 3 favorites, 3 underdogs. And that's why I started off this show with the like all the bangers, right? Like I talked about Dumas, Magomedov, Gaziev, clearly the main event, right? Like, is that where you're getting your leverage on this slate, or is it going to be more towards the middle, like maybe a Mirzakhanov and Menefield? Is that potentially a fight that goes a little bit lower owned? I think it is, personally. Mirzakhanov is a slower paced guy. Menefield, a very, very big bonehead in there. Not the best game plans. He'll shoot for takedowns against grapplers. He'll fight at kickboxing range against a kickboxer. I imagine nobody wants to click Menefield on this slate, but I also don't look at Mirzakhanov as a super prospect, and that's one of my problems. He's like 13-0, right? And it's a guy who has been moving up the food chain pretty nicely. Beating Jacoby by a decision isn't going to be the best score in the world, but like there's not a lot of grappling to be had here, right, TJ? So if there's a fight on the whole entire slate that's going to be a little bit higher owned with pace wise, this is a light heavyweight fight, right? They usually throw like one punch, wait for the other guy, 1-2, right? There's not going to be a huge pace here. Is this one you might want to go lower against the field? Maybe. If it goes deeper in the fight, because the problem is when this fight ends, it's going to end first round. That's the big problem.
Did we pick? Sorry, I was.
It's Mirzakhanov and Menifield. So Mirzakhanov, yeah, he's got a
the one thing I'll just say quick is I did basically, like, in my 20 entry max, I'm playing Vucinovic just basically on the Vucenic, basically on the squirrel patrol recommendation. So I got him in there and I'm playing a decent amount. But Kudalatse, I do have him a little bit in my 150 max. I faded him in my 20 entry max though. I have 0% of him in my 20 entry max.
Those builds, but these types of builds are going to be there, right? Like a 2, like from like Vucenic or Menifield. I'm not even going to consider Bedoya, right? Like you kind of land with either making a decision here or having to drop all the way down to the plays that one of the chat people are saying, right? It's
you're playing Brener with one of those 8K and above guys, and it's like, which one do I choose? Or you're playing Alvarez with one of these 7K guys, and it's like, damn, which one do I go with? I have a decent amount of Mirzakhanov. I didn't get as much of him in my 20 entry max as I did my 150. Menifield is a guy I did still include in my 20 entry max just in case, because Mirzakhanov is picking up some pretty heavy ownership today. And so I wanted to, Menifield has a decent chance enough to win. So I kept him in there as kind of a leverage spot in my 20 entry max. And then I have, I think, even more of him than this in my 150.
Yeah. No, this slate kind of plays itself when you just nailed it right there, right? Like, you know where the builds are going to be. And it's like, you kind of need to sprinkle on like certain ranges and consider these guys somewhat of the same type of plays. So I agree 100%. Time to pay the bills, though, TJ, here. As RotoGrinders Premium, get ahead of the competition with RotoGrinders Premium. We've got an option for whatever level you're looking for. Get yourself a 6-month combo subscription at an exclusive price of $469.99. That's a savings of $250 instead of buying all 6 months of Combo Premium. If you're not a fan of that commitment, you can get a month of RotoGrinders Combo Premium for $120. Those that want to get a test run before dipping their toes in the water, get a 3-day pass, $19.99. Check the links in the description below for more information. We do have a question in chat that does make a lot of sense. What do you think in single entry, fading the main event, punt Tony Ferguson and the rest of the 5 upside people, I think, get a finish? That's a way to attack it, right? That is a legitimate way to attack the field. Just know that you're sacrificing a lot in your lineups if and when Ferguson loses, right? Like, I think everyone knows that he can turn back the clock. I imagine you're looking at the finishing people, maybe grabbing him one in the middle range, maybe a Brener that we're talking about, and then grabbing those ones like the Gaziev, Magomedov, Dumas. Like, these guys have legitimate ceilings, and they're all competing against Nurmagomedov. That's the problem. Nurmagomedov's floor is huge. He can grapple. He's got heavy hands. I like that. I like that idea, right? Like, the smaller field, people aren't going to want to do that, right, TJ?
I like it, but yeah, I like it better in theory, I think, than I do on this particular slate, just because I am going so heavily on Nurmagomedov. Unless I'm looking at it, I can't do it. But I'm so heavy on him today, and it's just like, when that main event's probably going to score like 150 plus points between the two fighters, and it's tough to not want to load up on that. But in theory, I really like the idea. You got to have a high risk tolerance, but it is a good way to get, first or last.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? Like, if you're looking to do it, the smaller the field, nobody's going to want to play Tony Ferguson. And I'm telling you, I don't think Yaya is the best play on the whole entire board, but I think he's just got better win equity for 6,900. And I think any form of a win should be decently paced. The problem is he could score like 52 points in a kickboxing, slow paced split decision, which is a big problem. But yeah, the other way to attack the slate, which I've been telling you that I like to do, TJ, is DK Pick 6 Firefox extension. In case you missed it, RotoGrinders Premium subscribers can now use the RG DK Pick 6 browser extension on Firefox to have our premium props and pick'em projections overlaid on screen, so you can quickly and easily find the lines with the best values and make expert picks all in one place. Download it for Firefox today. I like the Pick 6, man, because say you're getting to the promised land, say you have those permutations, right, that you're going up the board with, you can kind of hedge out with the DK pick six, do you think?
Yeah, that is a really good way to go about it. And I think the field is starting to get a little bit sharper with pick six than they were right at the beginning, but with the Roto Grinders tools, there's still some pretty serious edges there. So I think that's a great call.
Yeah, and one of the big things too, I like for fantasy wise when it comes to DFS, MMA, and pick six, right, is going on the unders for some of the underdogs that I'm fading, because it's directly correlated, right? Like if they're going to get knocked out, you can't accumulate points. So if you think, Mikey O is going to get knocked out early, he's expected for 45.5 points in pick six. Like, I mean, that's an easy way to just take an under there and potentially have an edge. So final thoughts on this one, TJ? It looks like you are in the streets. Did you get in the big contest? They're all basically filled.
Yeah, I did it all last night. I tried. The benefit of producing for the weekend is I was like making the events for the live streams last night, and so I got everything in there. I'm playing single entry in all the like leaderboard contests. I got 20 entries in my 100K to first $15, and then I'm MME the mini max as well. I got some bets in there today. I'm picking to win. I'm picking basically just all the underdogs. I got Tululin, Bedoya, Hughes, Vucenic, Mays, Mirzakhanov, Yaya, Brener, and Dern today as my winners. Yeah,
I do have a question. How does Chiesa fit into the player pool? Because he seems like, yes, we have talked ourselves into wanting to click a Tony Ferguson, but as a MME guy, as a 20 max, right? Even Michael Chiesa's got to be kind of priced out of lineups, right?
See, I'm actually quite a bit higher on Chiesa than you and Squirrel are today. I got a lot of them.
Well, I mean,
not so much in
dead
MME.
Body almost.
Like, in MME, like in the 20 entry max, I think I have him in 25%, so I probably will be under the field there. But I got him in my single entry today. And that is what I was torn between doing, is do I want to play Chiesa and Dern, or do I want to play like Mirzakhanov and Fernandez or Gatsiev? That's like the two, and Nurmagomedov. Like that's what I'm struggling with right now in single entry. Do I do Chiesa and Dern, or do I do the 2 9K guys?
I mean, I think the decision, and I know, is like safer to go with the 2 9K guys. But when you want to buy into volatility, Chiesa can get that top position. You're going to hope that he just starts teeing off, right? You don't want him to just hold Tony Ferguson down, to show a little mercy. No, we don't want that. We want no mercy. Go out there, try to kill people. That's really what we want to see. So, yeah, I mean, next week should be a little bit better with, some better internet, right? I don't know, was Squirrel on vacation or something?
Yeah, I don't know where he was. I just know he wasn't at home. And then he said he tried to restart the computer and it would not restart.
We've all been there. We've all been there for sure. Next week, listen, the train doesn't stop. MMA is every single week. Just because it's at noon doesn't mean you guys can't get in here. Get in the streets, check out all of Roto Grinders premium stuff. Sadly, it's only 11 fights next week. Tybura versus Spivak 2. It's just that one is a sloppy one. I don't know why it got made, and I've never seen Twitter go so crazy, TJ. The two heavyweights that could sloppy, and when you talk about fading, you'd love to fade it, but with 11 fights, that's next week. We'll worry about it. But SimLabs, guys heard about it? The expert DFS lineup generator tool from Roto Grinders and Fantasy Labs, known as SimLabs, just got even better. In addition to the desktop tool on the web, you can now download the SimLabs mobile app. Interesting, didn't know that. From the App Store, and use the power of DFS simulation in the palm of your hand. Available to combo and single sport subs. You can also buy an a la carte in the App Store. Check it out today. Have you dabbled with it? I imagine on the go, it's got to be like, hey, say I'm going to a baseball game, right, TJ? You're the baseball guy. And I want to make a lineup that makes me plus EV. Can I fiddle around with this thing?
You can do it with SimLabs. without sitting in your seats on the app, without looking at anything else. You can do 150 max if you want. Like, say you're on the go, you reserved 150 lineups.
Yeah.
And you forgot. You're not home. You're not at your laptop.
You're panicking.
You can use SimLabs and have 150 plus EV really good lineups and not have to worry about spending all that time in lineup HQ. So I'm a guy personally that I like to control. That's why I love lineup HQ, because I like to fiddle. I'll spend hours doing it because I enjoy it. But if you want to cut down that time frame, and if you want plus EV, well standard, like built lineups, either make them very contrarian, make them very close to optimal, whatever you want, they're going to be well built, correlated lineups. And so definitely check that one out. My last question for you before I get out of here is, if I'm doing the 9K fighters route, pick 3 for me: Magomedov, Gatsiev, Fernandez, and Mirzakhanov. Pick 2 for me.
My name is going to be Gaziev, because I think he's going to be the lower owned of the guys. And what has he done? He's come out like an absolute madman and murked people before. I think it's a good spot, especially compared to the range for the upside. He's got multiple knockdown and volume too. Say he gets a deep first round finish, I think it would be because he's mauling Mays, so that would be a good thing. That's an ownership-esque type of play. And then Dumas, right? Do you want to consider him 89? Is he?
I don't,
okay?
Because I already have Tululian.
Son of a bitch. You're forced almost to Magomedov. You just are. I mean, that's just the way. And here's the thing. He's eventually going to bust, TJ. I mark my words, he will bust, not necessarily from a winning or losing standpoint in the UFC, but from a DFS standpoint, where he just doesn't do anything. He's so slow starting that his opponent gets off, stalls him out. This isn't the spot, though. Mikey Yo, checked out. This guy's got a retirement plan already. He's ready to go somewhere else and retire. So definitely a decent slate. Going to see some high scores here. But for Squirrel that no longer is in here, TJ, myself, we're out of here.
Hold on, I'm not ready to find the music yet. You always outro so quick. You're so fast.
I'm just dancing instead. Dance us out.
All right, we'll find it. There it is. All right, see you, people.
See you guys.
Have a good day. We'll see you back for MLB.